All right, what's up, everybody? It is just 1 minute before 11 o'clock Eastern time, and we are about to get started. I see people logging in. This is a live training, and hopefully you see a screen. Right now, you should just see the title screen that says 5 Keys to Preventing Volunteer Burnout. That's what you should see on your screen, the Church Fuel logo. If you're joining us on your computer, you should see a opportunity to chat with us, and you can participate there in the chat room. In fact, I'd love for you to go ahead right now and just put in the chat room, maybe just put your name of your church and what city you're in. And I would love to just see who's here as we get started today. We're going to be here for probably about 45 minutes or so. This is a live training. I'm trying to do some questions at the end. But we're going to talk through volunteers in your church. We're going to talk through volunteer burnout. And so Elevate Church in Illinois is here. Stones Crossing, hello. Hello, Greg. Hello, Kevin. Thank you guys so much, and girls, for typing in the chat where you are. Matt from Wildwood. We've got New Jersey, Texas, Indianapolis, Northwest Arkansas, Chandler, Arizona, in the middle of the desert is here. Missouri. So great. Robert, Rich, Ben, John, Jennifer, welcome from Arlington, Virginia, great part of the country. Colorado Springs, hey Pam, welcome everybody. Timothy, Randy, Jennifer, another Jennifer, Jay, Tim, North Dakota is here. I think that's ND, right? North Dakota, awesome. Welcome. Well, I am really glad you're here. Thanks for taking time out of your day. Love for you guys to just chat throughout this. If you want to share takeaways, links, your church's website, anything in the chat room, feel free to talk through. We've got some members from our team also standing by, so if you've got questions that I don't get to answer live, definitely just type them in as well to the chat, and we'll be able to respond or send you some more links. Just a couple things as we get started. Hopefully you received an email with the link to join, and maybe on one of those emails was some notes or a note guide, but I know we'll post that in the chat right here as well. But there's just a one-page handout if you want to kind of pull it up on maybe a separate computer screen, maybe an iPad or something like that. You could also print it out. It's just one page, just as an opportunity to take notes. I'm a little bit old school in the sense that I actually like to print these pages and sit and learn with a pen or a pencil in my hand and just write stuff down. I find that my brain works a little better like that, particularly when I'm learning from a webinar. And so you may just want to print out that one page of notes, and you can kind of follow along that way. I'm going to go through a ton of just very practical, super helpful, I think lots of ideas that you'll be able to do and implement in the coming weeks. Some of these things you'll be able to even do today. Some of these things can make a big difference in the life of your church over time. So I would encourage you just to do a couple of things as we dive in. If you've got other windows open, I know everybody's a multitasker, right? But if you've got other things going on, other things happening, I'd love to just invite you just to minimize those or close them all down. I know I've got all the other things closed. I turn notifications off so that I can focus on helping you for the next 45 minutes. And if you'll do me that favor as well, of just maybe focus in for a little bit, take some good notes and think through this stuff in regards to your church. I know the demands of ministry are very pressing. There's a lot going on. And so I don't take your focus for granted. But if you could do that just for the next few minutes because of our topic, would love to serve you that way. So here's my family. We live in Atlanta. I don't know if you're on Twitter, but would love to interact with you on Twitter. There's my Twitter name, as well as @ChurchFuel, which is much easier to remember. I actually see tweets and comments that come into both of those accounts. And so we live in Atlanta. My wife and I, we've been married for 19 years. We have 3 kids. This is from a couple years ago. So we've got a high schooler, a middle schooler, and an elementary schooler. So literally a kid is leaving the house for like 2 hours in the morning and coming home for 2 hours in the afternoon. So buses and lunches and homeworks and going in early. I've got a chorus, I've got a band, and I've got sports, right? So life is busy, but life is good. And so our team is based in Atlanta. We're doing this webinar live today from our office in downtown Alpharetta. And so our team is here and working hard on just serving you and resourcing churches. We say, you probably heard us if you've ever been to a training before, we use this phrase insanely practical all the time. I'm not going to talk to you a lot today about why volunteers are important, or the culture and the theory behind volunteers, or even the biblical aspect to why we should have volunteers. I'm going to make a big assumption that you know it's important, that you believe in the ministry of volunteers, and that you want to engage and equip and recruit new ones and take care of the ones you have, and pastor those volunteers well. And so our goal with all of our trainings, with our membership program called Church Fuel, with our free trainings like what we're doing today, with all of our documents and resources, is to be insanely practical so that you can grab hold of these things and just move your church forward in the way God wants to do that. As we put the training together, Shannon, who is our content director, and I were working on the training today, we were thinking of 3 groups of people. And so we were thinking of pastors who might be tired of just trying stuff, particularly with this area of volunteer burnout. I get so many emails from pastors and leaders just like you who's like, man, we can never seem to get enough people to volunteer. And so when somebody, sends like the breakup text, right? Like, we need a break, pastor. We're just tired. And so it's so like this the needs for volunteers in your church just never seems to go away. And what we hope to encourage you with today is that there's hope and there's help, and you don't have to just keep beating your head against the wall, needing more volunteers all the time. Another group of people is we're kind of talking to churches who don't want to sacrifice health for growth, or vice versa. And so we're going to hold up both of those things in tension. And so today's topic actually is going to skew itself a little more toward the health side of things. We're going to talk about how to take care of the volunteers that you have, and how to serve and build up the volunteers that you have. And really a byproduct of health in this particular instance, I think, is going to be growth. In fact, as you make your volunteer ministry such a great place for these volunteers, what's going to happen is a trickle-down effect of more people will just naturally want to be involved. So while we're not necessarily talking about recruitment today, if you do what we talk about today, it will absolutely help you get more volunteers involved. And then the last group of people, and I think this is you because you wouldn't be here otherwise, is you're a leader and you're probably leading volunteers, but you view your leadership as a stewardship, and you're willing to work. And so you don't ever see in our language, in our website, and I'm not going to tell you this today, hey, if you just do these 3 things, it's guaranteed to grow your church. In fact, I can't guarantee that this is going to grow your church. I don't know if you're going to apply it, if you're going to do it. I don't know what God blesses and doesn't bless. Like, there is a divine unknown involved in all this. But what I can say is that your investment of time over the next 40 minutes or so is really an investment in your leadership. And you are saying, hey, God's put me in this church. God's put some volunteers around me, and I want to be the best leader I can be of those people. And so if you would say, hey, I'm willing to look in the mirror, I'm willing to learn and grow, then our goal is to just help you today. So we're going to talk about 5 keys to preventing volunteer burnout. And if you're just joining us, there's a 1-page PDF that you can download to take some notes. I want to encourage you just to dial in and focus in as we kind of go through this, because I'm going to go through a lot of ideas and a lot of information and try to respect your time to the best that I can. And so the kind of key principle that we come in is that your volunteers should be the happiest people in your church. I was sharing this with a friend of mine yesterday named Chris, and he said, it's not really happy, it's joyful. And I was like, you know what? That's so true, and I need to change the slide to reflect that. The people serving in your church, even though you may ask them to give a lot, even though you may be asking them to show up early and to give up their time, those volunteers should be the most joyful people in your church. Even when they're tired, they should be happy. Even when they're working hard, they should be joyful. Even when they're interacting with difficult people that they're trying to serve, they should be joyful. Your volunteers should be the happiest people in your church. So why is it that reality, right? If they should be, like, they're in the know, they're in the group, they're in the family, they're in the fold. If they should be the happiest, if they should be joyful, why does reality sound a lot more like this note that I got from a real person named Beth? And Beth sent us this email not long ago. She said, the issue that our staff has been discussing lately is how to handle people who are serving regularly in the church, most often in kids ministry, and are asking to step out of their roles because they need a season of rest. I didn't edit this email. This is exactly what Beth emailed in. She said, listen, we've got people that are trying to break up and saying, it's not you, it's me. I just need to rest. And she goes on. She says, sometimes it's because of family issues they're dealing with. Seems serious. But sometimes it's more of an issue of just feeling overwhelmed and tired with everyday life. We are currently experiencing an exciting time of growth, and the last thing we need is less volunteers. And I get the tension here, because what Beth is saying is, like, when people should be leaning in, why are they leaning out? if there's excitement going on, if we've got a big purpose, if we got a big mission, why are people, right, not seeing what I see? Where is the disconnect happen? And though the volunteers that are serving should be the most engaged, and they should be closest to the life change, and they should be closest to all the cool and exciting things going on in your church, what do we do when they say, hey, we're overwhelmed, we're tired, our kids are playing sports, and we're traveling a lot, and what do we do when the church gets pushed to the back burner? And so we're going to talk about how to approach that. We're going to talk about how to deal with that. I don't know that you can ever actually beat and get rid of volunteer burnout, because people tend to overcommit and overexert themselves. And people are going to get burned out. People are going to need a season of maybe stepping away. However, I think there's a lot that we can do to prevent it. I don't know that we can fully eliminate it, but I think there's a lot that we can do to prevent it. And I just want to walk through 5 of those things. 5 keys. I think each of these are not necessarily in order. You can pick and choose which ones you want to implement. But I think there's 5 keys to preventing volunteer burnout. The first thing I want to talk about is this: celebrate collectively, but appreciate individually. So celebrate and appreciate, but you want to celebrate everybody, right, collectively, but you want to appreciate it individually. Now, as I think about this, without knowing anything about your church, I know you typed in the chat where you're from and a little bit about your church, but if I didn't know anything about your church, I could probably make an educated guess, and the guess would be this: is that you're probably not thanking people enough. Now, this is true in my life, right? I feel convicted about this all the time. In fact, my friend Chris, who I mentioned earlier, was telling me the other day how he practices gratitude. And there was some conviction there. I was like, you know what? I need to be more grateful. And he's like, it's practicing a habit of that. That's what helps keep me joyful. And so without knowing anything about your church, I think I could surmise or guess that you're probably not thanking people enough. One of the things that we need to do is we need to thank people until they ask us to stop, right? How do we know if we're saying enough? Well, we're probably not saying thanks enough. If they ever come and say, hey, you have thanked me over and over and over, please stop thanking me. That's when you can stop, right? It's virtually impossible to over thank people. It's virtually impossible to over appreciate your volunteers. And so I really believe that you should mention your great volunteers often. And I'm talking about celebrating collectively. To celebrating collectively, like celebrate your volunteers from the stage. A great way to do this is work this into your sermon. You don't have to make it an announcement. You don't have to make it give it a 2-minute time of emphasis. It's by the way moments. That's what I call these in a sermon. When you're just preaching on something and you kind of plan, hey, by the way, our kids ministry workers are doing an amazing job. Or by the way, our greeters, these, by the way, celebrating collectively all your volunteers. As you talk about all the people that make church happen. We had a saying in our church, I used to say all the time, that our church was fueled by God, right? God was the fuel of the engine of our church. But it was driven, right? It was like who was actually making stuff happen were our volunteers. And so celebrating volunteers all the time, lifting them up, saying, hey, if you serve, we're so grateful. If you serve in our kids ministry, we're so grateful. Like this spirit of thankfulness publicly, right? And so you don't necessarily in this thing, you're not calling out people by name, although that's okay, but you're celebrating collectively all your volunteers. You're putting out a spirit of gratefulness and thankfulness for the people that serve. And it's so easy to overlook these things. It's so easy to overlook these people. And so celebrate your volunteers from the stage. Another thing that you can do is you can celebrate your volunteers on social media. If you're on Facebook, if you're on the Twitter, if you're on Instagram, whatever social media platforms your church engage, at least once a week, post a picture of a volunteer. Maybe you call it a volunteer of the week, or maybe you just celebrate your volunteers. Post a picture of some greeters or some people working, the band who might be playing, or somebody who's running the soundboard. Post pictures of your volunteers and celebrate all your volunteers, even as you draw attention to one of them. This could be a regular occurrence. A regular, volunteer Wednesday where you're just calling out and thanking people. And every time you do this, you're celebrating your volunteers and helping create that culture. Here's an example from Life Point Church in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And this is just a quote image they put out. And churches are not built in the talents of the few, but sacrifices of the many. And then here in the comments, they're just thanking the volunteers. Like, hey, we would not be where we are today without the sacrifices of our volunteers. And so what is this? This is just calling out all the people serving, all the people making this happen. And look, people are liking this. You know, people are liking this and sharing this and saying, hey, it's an honor to serve. And, you know, you building up all these comments. And what Life Point Church is doing here is celebrating collectively. You know, another church, Revolution Church, in just right outside of San Antonio, Texas. They do this every week. They have a volunteer they had a volunteer of the week, they volunteer of the month. And they post a picture with their pastor, Pastor Zach White, you know, gets a picture taken with the volunteer and then just talks a little bit about this volunteer and is celebrating people personally. And so right here, as Yolanda is getting recognized for serving, guess what? All the volunteers are saying, hey, people notice when we serve. And that's really what people want emotionally when they serve. They're not serving for recognition. They're not serving for praise, but they want that. They want to know that what they are doing not only matters, but is known, is recognized. And when you recognize a volunteer on a platform like social media, look at some of the comments, right? Yeah, you know, we love, you know, people are jumping on the celebration bandwagon. Because when you celebrate people, that is a very attractive and almost addictive kind of thing. People will jump in and celebrate with you as you celebrate people. So don't be afraid to thank people personally. Don't be afraid to send a handwritten thank you note to a volunteer. In fact, one of the action steps that you may take today is say, hey, I'm just going to write a note. As soon as we get off this training, I'm just going to write a note to a volunteer who I saw do something great on Sunday. Or I saw them Sunday, and you know what? I've seen them for the last 10 Sundays. They're always there. A handwritten thank you note is an incredible way to personally thank your volunteers. I have been over to church members' houses and seen notes that I have sent them, handwritten notes that I've sent them on their refrigerator, right? That they put them up on the refrigerator. And what took me 1 or 2 minutes to write, they would put on their refrigerator and keep it as a memento. Why? Because they're so unused to getting those things, right? People are used to going to their mailbox and getting junk mail and bills. So when you actually go old school and get a note card and put a stamp on it and handwrite the address and handwrite something specific, you know, hey, Yolanda, I just wanted to thank you for being a greeter. I saw that mom come in with the 3 kids and they were by themselves and you walked up to them and you made them feel welcome. And I just want you to know I noticed that and thank you for serving. Right? Sending these specific notes to volunteers is an incredible way. It's like you are filling up their gas tank with appreciation by sending them a handwritten thank you note. One of the resources that we have in our resource library is actually a Photoshop file of a thank you card. It says thank you for serving. We actually have 3 of these. We have one that says thank you for giving, one that says thank you for serving, and one that says thank you for inviting. And what we recommend that you do is every time one of these actions happens, send them a thank you note. I mean, when somebody's serving, make sure that somebody can't serve in your church for more than 6 months without getting a personally handwritten, hand-addressed, hand-stamped thank you note. When somebody gives for the first time, send them a handwritten, hand-addressed, hand-stamped thank you note. When you hear that somebody invited a friend and that friend came, send a thank you note that says, hey, I heard you invited, you know, so-and-so and they came to church for the first time, so thank you for doing that. Go out of your way to say thanks and to write it down and to capture and to crystallize exactly what it is that you're thankful for. And one of the convictions I have on this is that we tend to feel thankful. Like even as I'm talking about this, you're appreciative of your volunteers. But feeling thankful is not the same as saying thanks. You know, you can feel grateful. You can feel thankful. And I would encourage you that when you feel thankful, to actually express it, to actually send the note card, to post the social update, right? And you can use digital, digital call outs as well. But unexpressed gratitude is actually perceived as ingratitude. This is something, you know, I struggle with at home. Like I'm very thankful for my family. But if I don't say that, what they will perceive me as actually, it's not like I'm sure he's thankful, he just forgot to say it. No, people actually perceive it as ingratitude. They're like, man, they don't even notice. I show up every week and I do this and no one notices and they're not even grateful and they're just using me. And that may be the farthest thing from the truth, but unexpressed gratitude is actually perceived as ingratitude, not indifference, but actually a negative. So say thanks all the time. Let me give you just an idea that you may use here to say thanks. We used to do this event. In fact, I just sent out a video to all of our members. It's about a 20-minute training video exactly on how this worked. And we sent the agenda out and the resources and all this stuff out. But we did this event in our church. We did it quarterly. So every 3 months, we would do a leadership summit. We would just gather all our volunteers. It was not training, but there was training added. It was not, night of worship, but there was worship added. And it was it was well attended. I mean, 70–80% of our volunteers would show up every single time we did it. It was really well done. There's a secret sauce to it. But one of the things we did at our event is every single time we gathered our volunteers together, we gave out an award. And this is the award we gave out. And this was like a metal, like a guy in our church fabricated this in his shop. This is what he did for a living. And so he made these awards. They were super heavy. They were really cool. And we would give out about 2 of them every quarter to our volunteers. And we would recognize a volunteer who just went over and above, who just did something amazing. And we would celebrate them. And all the other volunteers would give them a standing ovation. And it was a really, really cool way to celebrate our volunteers collectively while calling out someone specifically, and seeing those things work in tandem was really amazing. Here's another church, City Hill. This was their volunteer award. They had the light bulb in it, right? You're the light of the world. A city on a hill can't be hidden. And they're giving this out to like volunteers who just do an amazing, amazing job, right? And so I would encourage you to find ways to celebrate your volunteers as a group. Right? And that's great. That's great. But also make it specific and tangible. Appreciate and recognize your volunteers individually. So celebrate collectively and appreciate individually. So how are you doing with the spirit and the action of just gratefulness who you already have? I have found this to be an amazing perspective shift, because it is so easy for us to go, we don't have enough volunteers. We need more. More is a moving target, right? We always need more. But when we stop and we go, I know we need more. God, please send us more. But you've called me to pastor and steward and lead these volunteers well. So even if you never send more, I'm going to make sure the volunteers that are serving right now feel loved, feel appreciated, and feel celebrated. I'm going to celebrate who we've got, not just be on the lookout for who we need. And so that's the first thing I would encourage you to do. Celebrate collectively, but appreciate individually. Let's do the second thing. Second thing, connect the dots. Connect the dots. This is a huge point, a huge principle. And it really comes from this verse. Proverbs 29:16 says that the people can't see what God's doing. They will stumble all over themselves. But when they attend to what he reveals, they are most blessed. So what does this mean, right? Your volunteers need to see the bigger picture. They need to see how what they do matters to the mission of the church. And so I would encourage you to never ask people to fill a spot. Never ask people to just fill a spot. I have been in this church, and some of you have been there and you've seen it. I have been in a church service. I mean, a church service in the moment, where someone has stood up and they say, hey, right now in the nursery, we don't have enough volunteers. And so is there somebody who today would go serve in the nursery today? And I cringe. I can't believe that happens for many reasons. But I don't know that there's a lot of people in your church who would say, yeah, I just want to fill a spot. Yeah, let me just fill a spot. No, instead, we don't want to recruit people to, fill seats and take up spots. We want to invite people to participate in what God's doing in our church. Very few people just get excited about completing tasks or checking boxes or filling spots. I don't know that there's a bunch of people that would come up and say, hey, would you please find things to do to keep me busy because I'm not busy enough? Will you please find things to do to help? I just would love to just do more stuff because I don't have anything to do. I'm really bored. In all my history of pastoring and leading, I've never had somebody come up and say, hey, Michael, I'm bored. I have nothing going on at work, at home, at school, in life. I just have all this free time. Can you please give me stuff to do? Right? We never have those things happen. Instead, we have to call people to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. So if you are casting a compelling vision, then you're not going to have to bribe people into staying. And so I want to encourage you to develop a clear and compelling why you are asking people to serve. One of the resources that we'll have for you is a volunteer job description. I really believe every volunteer in your church should have a job description, Not a 16-page job description with 37 bullet points on it, but I mean a half a sheet of paper that just says, here's what you do. Here's who you go to if you've got any questions. Here's exactly how much time this should take throughout the week. And most importantly, here's why this role matters to what we're doing as a church. Like, here's why being a greeter matters. Here's why being a guitar player matters. And draw a line as clear as day from the role that you're asking somebody to fill to the mission of your church. When we talk about connecting the dots, you have got to continually and specifically remind people why they serve. Listen, working with middle schoolers is difficult. Working in the children's ministry is hard. Being a greeter requires consistency. Playing in the band is a really big deal. And you've got to constantly remind people that there is a reason behind what they're doing. And that reason is not just because it is a box on the org chart, or it is a slot where we need somebody to stand. We have got to continually bring people back to casting vision and casting clarity, right? To clarifying why this role, we can draw a line between that role and the mission. So we need to connect the dots for people. That was number 2. Now, a couple things as we go on to number 3. We will send out these slides to you afterwards. So if you missed something or you want to see a picture, we're going to send the slides out for everybody. And also, there's a handout where you can fill in the blanks. And we will, after this is over, send that handout maybe with the blanks filled in. So if you miss something, I know you can't go back on a live webinar, but if you miss something, we'll get it to you. But let me give you the third thing. The third thing is it is about them. And this is a huge mindset shift, because I am of the belief, right, that church is not about us. In fact, I remember reading Rick Warren back in the day. And I remember reading Purpose Driven Life, where it's like, it's not about you. It's not about you. And that message is a message that I need to constantly preach to myself. I preach to my kids all the time. It's like, I don't want to go there. Well, it's not about you. I don't eat Mexican again. Well, it's not about you, right? And so we're reminding people all the time that it's not about them. But when it comes to taking care of volunteers, I want to encourage you to make a little shift and say, well, maybe at least a little bit. Let's make it about them. It's about them. And so here's a word I want to encourage you to write in your notes and talk through with your team. Talk about the benefits of serving. The benefits of serving. Usually when we talk about serving, we talk about the benefits to the church, right? Our mission, our vision, our purpose. We need this. It's important. It really matters, right? We know that volunteers benefit our church. But how does volunteering benefit your volunteers? And this is the other side of the coin, right? What benefits do your volunteers have for being a volunteer? We need to talk about the benefits of serving. And I'll give you an example of this. Some of the best relationships that people have in life come when they serve with other people. And so friendships can be a very real, intangible benefit to serving. Being in the know is a benefit of serving. When people are in the know, when they know what's going on, that's a benefit. Information is really a form of appreciation. And as people serve in your church, we need to constantly remind them that there are things that can benefit them, that can help them, where they can serve and get something in return for serving. Now, typically we would say, well, your reward is in heaven. Your reward's in heaven. Well, that's great, but people aren't in heaven yet, right? Hopefully they go to heaven. But what benefits do people have in life for serving in your church? And so let's talk about how can we make volunteering a more beneficial environment for people to serve. I'll give you a couple of tangible, practical things here. First of all, plan some time off for them. Plan time off. When you get a job, right? If you have a job, I have a job, right? And our team, we have a job. Our job is to serve and equip you as pastors. We are a company. We have staff. And we have people, they come to work, we come into the office, and we think all day, every day, how can we serve you? And they get paychecks, right? People are paid to work at Churchfield. And that's why we sell things on our website. Sometimes people get mad that we sell things. Well, we have employees, and we have healthcare costs, and we have an office that we come to when we work at. But when we are hiring people, right, we just hired a few new people. When we hired people, one of the things that we talked to them was, here's your benefits, right? What benefits do you have for working here? I mean, we know you want to help people, or we wouldn't even be having a conversation, but what are your benefits? And one of the benefits we offer our staff is time off, right? So we don't think about this with volunteers, but your volunteers actually need some time off. They need a benefit that is like a vacation from volunteering. And it sounds weird to think about it, but let's be clear about it. I mentioned this before in some other trainings, but when I'm not, consulting or working on the weekend, my family and I go to North Point, and Transit is the name of the middle school environment. A few times a year, they just don't have it. They just don't have it. Like there's no Memorial Day weekend. There's no Transit. Transit normally meets on Sunday morning while the service is going on. It's a middle school, ministry, middle school environment. And a few times a year, particularly on holiday weekends, they just say, we're not having it. And it's not because middle schoolers don't go to church on that weekend. There are a ton of middle schoolers that are there, and they just like their ministry got canceled. But you know why they cancel it? So their volunteers can have the week off. They say, hey, go to the lake. They don't guilt their volunteers into coming to church on Memorial Day weekend. They actually say, hey, don't come, don't serve. Take the day off. And I think I'm not saying you have to do this, but I'm lifting this up as a benefit to say, hey, listen, we're thinking about you. We know you're serving middle schoolers. We know you love doing that. Thank you for using your influence. But a couple times a year, we'd love to ask you to not serve so you can guilt-free and enjoy not being here. It's okay. And so I think that's just a great example. Here's another example. You can give your volunteers gifts. I know you're not going to build this great, amazing culture in a day, which is why we're not talking about culture, because culture is sometimes hard to build. But giving gifts sometimes helps create culture. T-shirts are a great thing to start. I mean, do all your kids ministry workers, give them a T-shirt. I mean, that's a really good use of $5 to create some swag, create some culture, create some camaraderie, and give some volunteers gifts. I mean, when you write that thank you card that we talked about in the appreciate and celebrate thing, I mean, throw a little Starbucks gift card in there. Just give a little. It doesn't have to be super expensive. It doesn't have to be a budget breaker. But when you do that, what you're doing is you're saying, hey, I honor you. I value you. Here's a little thing. And it's a benefit. It's a benefit to serving. Make sure your volunteers have fun. There's something spiritual about fun. I don't know what it is, but make it fun for people to serve. Make it fun for people to serve. I heard the leaders at Community Christian up in Chicago area talk about why people stay at a church. And they say people come to a church for all kinds of reasons, right? They like the preaching, they like the music, but people tend to stay because they have a relationship and a responsibility. A relationship or responsibility. That's why people stay at a church. They have a relationship. They know they got friends. They got family. They know some staff. They know the people they serve with. They have a relationship. They have a responsibility. So your volunteer teams is one of those environments in your church where there is both relationships and responsibilities. People stay connected because they have a part to play. That's the responsibility thing, but also because they have a relationship. And so are your volunteers having fun together? I mean, one of the things when we did those leadership events quarterly, we made sure that they were fun. And when we had food, we hung out. I mean, I typically had to, kick people out the building because they were just hanging around with each other and talking with people. We know churches and we see churches that organize just fun events for their volunteers. And don't minimize that. When people like who they serve with, they are more engaged in serving. If people have relationships with the volunteers they serve with, for example, your groups, your small groups, we talk about this in a lot of our training, but your small groups probably can act a little bit more like a team, and your team can act a little bit like a group. So in other words, if somebody's on a volunteer team, I mean, what if there was a kind of a small group component to that where people knew each other, or they prayed for each other during the week, or they were on a group me message app chat, or they were in a group text message where they were just kind of talking about life, or talking about kids, or talking about whatever's going on. I mean, what if your serving teams had a little bit of a group component, had a little bit of a fellowship component to it? See, if you give people all responsibilities without any relationships, it becomes drudgery. If you have all relationships but without any responsibility, it becomes like a fraternity. Like you're not creating like little fraternities and sororities of people where nobody else can get in. That's not the kind of group I'm talking about. But I am talking about add a little life to it, add a little fun to it. Listen to their ideas. That's another huge way. A big benefit is volunteers are going to have ideas for how you can improve things. And by saying, hey, listen, when you're serving, it means not only are you going to get inside information from us, but we want to hear from you. We'd love for you to improve the areas in which you serve. And I have found that that is a big, big difference between a volunteer and a leader. Is a leader will want to have some ideas, they will want to share ideas, and they'll want to implement some of their ideas. And so a great way to value and honor your volunteers is to ask them questions and then listen. We get so infatuated with how can we train them? How can we train them? How can we train them? And I think we need some environments where we can actually just listen to them, where we can listen to what they have to say. So that's a great thing to do, is just to think through the benefits. Number 4, watch your expectations. Watch your expectations. When we talk about preventing volunteer burnout, the number one reason we see volunteers burn out is because they have unrealistic expectations placed on them. Sometimes they pick up things that were never clarified, but sometimes we put unrealistic expectations on them. The bottom line is people are already busy. And we can whine and moan that people, some parents, where I live, parents treat their 11-year-old baseball players like they're going to make it to the big leagues, and they're pushing. This is a big deal with youth sports culture, right? And so we can complain about it. We can talk about how people aren't consistent anymore with their church attendance. We can talk about how people work too much. Culture has changed, right? Culture has changed. People are busy. They're traveling. They're doing stuff. And that affects how they volunteer at your church. So a wise leader doesn't just bemoan that, but they recognize that. And they watch out for the expectations that they place on people. And so a great question to ask is, do you volunteer at your own church? I remember, this is a little, confession time. I remember being a pastor of the church and being frustrated that volunteers didn't come to the training meetings that we would have, like on a Tuesday or Thursday night. Until I realized that it was my job to actually lead the training and be at the training. And, then later on, I thought, you know what, if I worked at a State Farm, or if I worked as a school teacher and I didn't get off till 4 o'clock and I had to rush home and do this and all the kids, like right now, life is busy. My kids are at a very busy age, and we don't even do a lot of stuff, and it's busy. And it's tough for me to make a meeting at 7 o'clock. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but sometimes we have this curse of we work at the church or we're in, and so we think everybody else should be in. And so I'd encourage you to just think through, hey, if this wasn't your job, or if this wasn't your leadership responsibility, what would it look like for you to volunteer at your church? What expectations would be placed on you, and could you handle them? It's likely that you have too many things going on in your church. If you jump in with the church fuel community, one of the very first things we're going to help you do is identify your most important ministries. And I know that sounds weird because you're like, well, they're all important. But they're not all important. They're not all equally important. And it may be that you have too many things going on. When we talk about volunteerism, it's like, well, we just need more volunteers. Well, you probably don't have a secret, drawer in your desk with volunteers in there, right? There's not like a secret room where there's 20 people waiting to serve. You have who you have. You have the resources that God's given you, including people. But it may be that you don't need more people. It may be that you need less stuff. Because the net effect is, if you have less stuff, is that you can recover those people and put them where they need to serve. Fewer ministries mean better ministries. A lot of our churches look like the menu, when you go into like a Chinese restaurant, or you go into like a cheesecake factory, right? And they give you a dang spiral notebook, and it takes 45 minutes to figure out that you just want a piece of cake, right? And so when we overwhelm people with options, when we overwhelm volunteers with needs, the result is that they either throw up their hands and they don't do anything because they're confused, or they try to do too many things and they get burned out. And so I really believe this. One of the keys to preventing volunteer burnout is to have fewer things where people can serve, right? To have fewer needs, right? Lift up your most important needs. And sometimes you may need to say no to something, not because it's a bad idea, but because you actually don't want volunteers coming off of the wall to do that other thing, which is not as important. And we've got to look out for the health of our volunteers. We've got to look out for the schedule of our volunteers. We've got to evaluate our programs and ministries based on effectiveness. And if they're effective in accomplishing our mission, then we should staff it up with volunteers properly. If they are ineffective, if they are disconnected, if they are not working as well as they should, when we put our people there, it is a recipe for burnout. One of the resources I've got for you is a ministry evaluation form. It's a way to honestly look at, is this ministry working? Is this program working? Not do we like it, and not is it good. We like it because it happens, and it's good because, it's not like a devil worship ministry. Of course it's good. It's not do we like it. It's not is it good. It's is it effective. And it's all evaluation is something we should do across all things. We need to evaluate all of our ministries and all of our, particularly the ones that involve volunteers, and go, are volunteers wasting their time in this ministry? And we've got to disconnect from the emotions of that and go, is this effective? Is this a good use? Is this good stewardship? Is this a wise use of people resources? Let me give you the fifth thing, because I want to honor your time and make sure that you get a lot of actionable ideas. And this one is so important. It's so important. It's make sure every volunteer has a pastor. Again, I'm going to send you the slides and the notes if you missed something. I'm going to tell you how to get all the stuff that we talked about in just a minute. But I want to make sure you don't miss this. Make sure every volunteer in your church has a pastor. If your volunteers only hear from you on Sunday when they show up, or when they get a lesson emailed to them, that's no good, right? Your volunteers actually need somebody in their life who is more interested in them as a person and them as a Christian, that's more interested in that aspect of their life than what they do. Like, we need to be for them as people, not as volunteers. We need to be for them as Christians who are trying to grow in their faith through serving, than the task that they do for your church. So when we talk about, org charts, something that's like, what does an org chart have to do with volunteers? Well, I encourage you to think through where you need people with the lens of an org chart. But just because somebody is beneath somebody on an org chart, it doesn't mean the person above them is actually taking care of their soul. Who cares for the soul of a volunteer? Who not just making sure they show up on time, or they have the curriculum, or they know how to be a good greeter, or that they learn the chords of the song. Who is caring for the soul of your volunteer? At the very beginning, when we said your volunteers should be the most joyful people in your church, the reason that they should be that is because there is somebody at the church, and it could be a staff member, but it could be another volunteer, but it's somebody is saying, hey, I'm for you. It's somebody who's saying, I'm here if you need me. Yes, I want you to do your job great, and I want you to be a great volunteer, and the ministry matters, but I'm for you, not just for your task. I'm caring for your soul, not just for the stuff that you do here at our church. You've got to invest in your people before you ask them to invest in your ministry. And that's a really, really, really important thing. Invest in your people before you ask them to invest in your ministry. One of the models that we teach, in fact, we've got a case study on it, is a church called Church of the Highlands in Birmingham. They've got some other campuses in and around Alabama. And they they structure their volunteer team around this principle, is that they say, hey, listen, every volunteer team needs a leader. They may need a recruiter. They need an administrator, but they also need a pastor. They need somebody. Every volunteer in the church needs to have somebody, and I use the term pastor not as a job title, but as a function, right? A shepherd. Somebody needs to be caring for the soul of every single volunteer. And that may not be the leader of the ministry, but it's somebody in the ministry who looks at their ministry through that lens. And so the fifth thing is make sure that every volunteer in your church has a pastor. When we talk about org charts, it's not about your direct reports. It's about your direct support. The reason to have an org chart is not so that people know who their boss is. The reason your church needs an org chart pushed all the way down to volunteers is that so people know who they can care for. So when I make our church feel org chart, it's not who works for me, who can do what I tell them to do. No, it's who do I need to invest in. It's who do I need to shepherd. It's who do I need to lead. And we've got to look at our volunteer structures that way as well. Now, I mentioned a ton, and I'm going to stick around for a couple of minutes if you've got any questions. And so if you have any questions, you want to type them in the chat. Our team is in the chat, but I'm going to actually jump in there in just a minute and answer a few questions. So if you have questions about anything that we talked about, any of the 5 things, any of the stuff that we talked about, just go ahead and type that in the question thing, and I'll hop over there in just a minute. But I mentioned a bunch of resources. I mentioned some trainings. I remember a couple of times I said, hey, we've got a video that walks through this. I showed you those evaluation forms. I showed you those thank you cards. And I wanted to tell you how to get those real quick. So if you will indulge me for just about 3 or 4 minutes, I want to just tell you how to get those things and then do some questions with you. Here's how to get all of the resources that we mentioned today. We have a course. It's called Recruit Volunteers Fast. Now, I know we talked about the kind of the care side of volunteers fast. The other side of the coin is that you need new volunteers to even care for, right? Some of you are like, I love to apply all these principles, but we need some new volunteers in the first place. So we have a course. It's a 3-module course, which means the meat of it is 3 training videos. And then there's a bunch of resources and plans and checklists and documents that go in it. So it's a shorter course, right? It's got 3 videos, and it's called Recruit Volunteers Fast. And in this course, we talk about running a 90-day recruitment strategy. And it doesn't have to be 90 days. You can do 30 days. You can spread it out. You can use it in a variety of different ways. But here's what's in the course. First of all, there's 3 coaching videos for you and your team. You can download the videos. You don't have to just log in and watch them. You can download them. We've got the audio and the transcript of them if you'd rather listen or read. But so there's 3 teaching segments all around recruiting, how to get new volunteers so that there's people to care for. And then there's documents, there's checklists, there's a timeline. All these are usually Excel documents or things that you can tweak and customize. There's a great volunteer sermon that you can preach. There's a sign-up card. There's social media posts. In other words, it's kind of a here's a volunteer recruitment campaign in a box. Everything you need to do to recruit volunteers. Now, right before the summer is a great time to do this. Right when you come back from the summer break, your church kind of heats up again in the fall. It's a great time to do this. So these resources, I mean, it's really timely. And so normally we have this course available for $399. But today on the webinar, it's just $149. That's just one-time payment. I did the math. I think I did the math right. I'm not a math person. So I think that's 63% off. So for $149, you can get the volunteer course. And also, we will include 3 months of Church Fuel One, which is $59 a month normally. So that's $177. And you can do all the math and add all that up. But it's a really, really good value. And it's a really great course. I was looking at all the resources in the course just last week and go, man, that checklist is really good. That sermon it's a strong sermon. I think if you preach that sermon and utilize that sermon, it will help you get some new volunteers. But with the course and with 3 months of Church Fuel, you'll have all of the forms that I showed, the thank you cards that you can download. You can send them to your own printer. You can have these files and the license to use them, but you can get all that. I think the button's going to appear here on the webinar if it's not there already, but you can get all of these resources at churchfuel.com/volunteer sale. churchfuel.com/volunteer sale. And so at that website, again, it's $149 one time. It's not a monthly payment for the course, and you'll get the course, all the resources that go with the volunteer course, all around recruiting, all around getting volunteers into the church so that you can care for them, and then 3 months of our flagship program called Church Fuel One. It's really, really, really good value. So $149 at churchfuel.com/volunteer sale. And so what I'll do is I'm going to leave the website up. You can click the button. You can resource that, look at that resource. But here's the deal. That is just for today. Okay. That is today. So that $149 for the volunteer course in the 3 months, we want to do that just for our webinar people today. Like, it's not on our website. We are not, tweeting it out to everybody. It's just for you, and it's just today. And so if you, when we get done here, if you want to sign up for that, you can absolutely do that. So if you've got questions, absolutely jump into that. So Brother Ignatius says it's way too expensive. I appreciate that feedback. I totally understand that it's not right for everybody, but I will say this. The average volunteer at the average church in America contributes almost $2,000 a year through tithes and offerings. And so when you recruit new volunteers, giving will absolutely be affected in your church. And I would just challenge you, if it's too expensive, totally fine, totally understand that. We absolutely cannot discount it anymore. However, I would encourage you to find some resources and invest in your volunteer ministry. Some other questions here. Edgar and Andrea asked FIRE. I did forget to do that. So FIRE stands for this. If you want to fire up your volunteers, here's what they need. They need freedom. They need information. Information is a form of appreciation. So your volunteers need to know what's going on before everybody else. Freedom, information, recognition. Okay, recognition, recognize for what they do, and then encouragement. Freedom, information, recognition, encouragement. If you can give all the volunteers that serve in your church those 4 things, they will really be fired up and excited about serving in your church. So again, if you've got some other questions, absolutely just go ahead and type them in. Mark said, hey, is there going to be a replay of this? We're going to have a replay of this that we will send the link out to everybody. We'll send the slides. We'll send the link, and I'll send you the link to this offer again to where you can jump in and do that. Pastor B says, can we get more time to get approval? You will absolutely be able to buy this package later, but this special price is just for today. So I, again, just want to shoot straight with you, Pastor, and just be straightforward with you. So again, if you've got other questions, Ryan said, can we have a playback of the video? We will send out a replay of this so that you can watch this. Andrea says, pricing based on church size would be great. That is something we have considered, Andrea, but we have tried to price the resources low. And I know not everybody can afford $147, but I think most churches can. And I would encourage you, again, if it's not with us, to invest in some type of training and some type of learning. E in fire was for encouragement. So encourage your volunteers. Daphne asked, will the evaluation form be available in the email? The forms that I mentioned are part of the sale. So the form, the course, the thank you cards, all those resources that I showed are part of the sale. If you jump in at churchfield.com/volunteer sale, you get all of those resources, a part of the bundle. Edgar says, thanks so much. One of the best seminars on volunteers. Thank you so much. For those of you saying, hey, listen, we can't afford resources, totally understand. I hope you don't hear like any condescension in my voice. I would absolutely encourage you to invest in that. But this was a free training. And hopefully there were some nuggets today that you mentioned in there, that we mentioned here today that you could grab hold of and use. And so we do these frequently. So definitely stay around. Ryan says, hey, this is great info. It changes people's lives before it changes your church, and that's why you need to invest. It's priceless. Thanks so much, Ryan. Again, we are not the only resource providers out there. I love our resources. I love our team that creates resources. This stuff is grounded in practice, not in theory. It's practical, not philosophical. And so I think it would really help you. Even just the volunteer sermon itself, I think would really, really help. Bill said, good info. Thanks so much. Thank you for being here, Bill. I know it's an investment of your time. So great stuff and no fluff. That's great. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Volunteers are the blood of the church. That's a little bit morbid, Aaron, but I totally get it. Absolutely. We do ministry through volunteers. And I know we didn't really get into the theology of this, but right, Ephesians chapter 4 says our job as church leaders is to build up the body. Right, is to build up the body and equip the people to do the work of the ministry. Not to do the ministry, all of it, but to equip people to do the ministry. And so there is a theological underpinning through all of this. So it's not just about tactics. It's not just about strategy. Your church matters. The mission of your church matters. And the calling that God's put on you matters. And so that's why I don't apologize for asking for an investment, because it is so powerful. When you invest in your leadership and your growth and in the health of your volunteer ministry, I believe your community will be changed through the people serving in your church. So if you've got any other questions, absolutely feel free to reach out. You can respond to any of the emails that we send you reminding you about the training today. Real people get those on the back end. So if you respond to me or whoever sent that email, we will absolutely get your comment. This website, churchfield.com/volunteer sale, we will have that up through tonight at midnight. So if you want to grab some approval, I didn't mention this because it sounds gimmicky, but we have a 30-day, no questions asked, money back guarantee. If you grab the resource and you go, that was oversold and underdelivered, that does not happen for us, but I offer that to you. So if you need approval, totally understand that. And so you can just say, hey, this stuff is guaranteed, 30-day money back guarantee for all of our resources for whatever reason. And so, I mean, if you didn't like the font, we would give you your money back. So we trust you. We love the church. We believe in you. We are for you, and we are for helping you. And so, if there's ever anything we can do for you, just reach out. Would love to have you jump in on this volunteer course. as well as the resources that come with the bonus of Churchfield One. I think it could really be a game changer in your church. I could put up slide after slide after slide of testimonial of story. We have churches that have as few as 8 people in them as a member, a paying member of our community, investing in their church. We have mega churches all the way down to small churches that fit in a living room. Church plants, established churches, just about every denomination. I think every state is represented that are available, that are represented in our programs. And so we would love to serve you. Love to serve you, key help you. Deborah's asking for the key takeaway. Deborah, that's for you. That's you to write down what key takeaway that you had from the training. And so if you missed something, again, you can jump in the replay or see the slides. But the key takeaway is for you to kind of process through, okay, after hearing all this information, what's the one thing that I need to do? And so I'd love for you to just pray through that and process that. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you for being here. If you got any questions, if I didn't get to your question in the chat because I missed it, they were kind of scrolling by really fast, just shoot us an email, and we'd love to serve you, love to help you. We will send you an email here in the next couple hours with the webinar link, with the replay link, and with the link to the slides. And so you'll be able to do that. And we will leave this sale website up throughout the day today. So I'd love for you to jump in on that if you can. You can do it later. It'll be a little bit of a higher price. It'll still be a great deal, but you can get the best price today. So with all that said, I hope you have a great rest of the week. Hope it's the middle of the week. Hope you're looking forward to a great weekend at your church. And we are here for you if you need us. So thanks for being here, and God bless.